Hey, good people. Welcome to the Evolving Education Project podcast, hosted by me, Dr. Tiffany M. Niachai, and friends, where we center the educational joys, passions, interests, and inquiries of people of color. We would like to begin by shouting out the top 5 cities with the most people who listened to last week's episode. Of course, coming in at number 1 is my hometown, Buffalo, New York. Where you at? Where you at, Buffalo? Thank you, Buffalo. The town that raised me. Then we have Lebanon, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Illinois, Chi-Town, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Tucson, Arizona. Thank y'all so much. We appreciate y'all for pressing play and listening in your car, at the gym, on your walk, wherever. We also want to thank Tasha Lindo Mueller for your thoughtful comment on our last social media post. She wrote, "Had a long commute and I listened to all 3 of the most recent episodes. Thank you for making my morning drive a peaceful/critical one. Heart emoji." Tasha, you just touched my heart so much. All of us. We are so honored. This episode is part 3.2 of our Culturally and Historically Responsive Literacy Now, the Brilliance and Joy of Students of Color series. To start from the beginning of the series, go to episode 14 and listen all the way through. We don't want you to miss any part of this powerful series, which is inspired by Dr. Gholdy Muhammad's best-selling book, Cultivating Genius, an equity model for culturally and historically responsive literacy, as well as her second book, Unearthing Joy, a guide to culturally and historically responsive teaching and learning. For this episode, we will learn about the work of DeAngelo Blanchard, a dance artist and educator based in New York City who is originally from Ohio. As a Lincoln Center Scholar, he holds both a Master of Science in Educational Leadership and a Master of Art in Dance Education from Hunter College. DeAngelo Blanchard is currently an assistant professor of professional practice in the dance department at Rutgers University. He also served as a district facilitator for the Connected Arts Network, a teacher leader with the Office of Teacher Development and Leadership, and a master teacher through the Office of Arts and Special Programs Department of Dance. Outside of the New York City Department of Education, he serves as a secretary for the executive leadership team of the New York Urban League Young Professionals. DeAngelo trained pre-professionally at Ballet Met Dance Company with the Tucson West African Dance Institute and continued his training at The Ohio State University, receiving a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Dance. He also trained at the American Dance Festival, Henny Urian's Studios, the Ailey House, and Impulse Tans. Blanchard has performed professionally with John Jasper's Projects, Jamil Jackson Dance Company, and is a candle bearer for the Brooklyn Academy of Music's Dance Africa. Blanchard has performed professionally for Bill T. Jones, John Jasper's Projects, Larry Kegwin, Brooklyn Academy of Music's Dance Africa, and has toured nationally and internationally. In 2015, DeAngelo founded the dance program at Bronxdale High School and today continues to fight for equity and access to the arts for all children of color. This interview was originally recorded in the fall of 2021, but it still hits. Now, let's listen in. Thank you for saying yes, for being here, and just saying yes because y'all be busy. And you as an artist, and I want to get into it about all of the stuff you do. Okay. About everything that you do. So tell us about yourself and everything, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom or whatever.
Wow, that is always the most awkward question. So, my name is DeAngelo Blanchard of
Yes.
the Springfield, Ohio Blanchards. I'm from Ohio. We moved to Columbus, and then I was like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be a dancer. And I moved to New York with $500 in a dream. Um, and I realized rent was real and homelessness was even realer. So I got my hustle on.
Yes.
And one of the first jobs that I got was the thing that I rebuked in the name of the Lord that I would never do, which was teaching dance in after school programs. Absolutely hated it, but not the teaching dance nor the children. It was the fact that
Right.
my life was on the subway. So I literally went from one job. I
Mm,
was work studying for dance classes here, traveling up to the Bronx for to teach there, going out to East Jesus Queens to teach there, and then coming into Brooklyn for rehearsal, and then going back home to Harlem. So it was a lot. It was a lot, and yeah, and then I like transitioned. I made this proclamation that all my jobs will be dance related because I am an artist, and that's why I moved to New
yes.
York. And then I ripped my quad tendon. So fell into some admin work. I was still working for an arts agency, so that was good. And my old job called up and they're like, "Do you want to teach?" And I was like, Sure." And then from there, an email popped out that said, "Hey, we're giving away free masters." And I was like, "A master's before I'm 30? I don't know." But at the time, my boss was like, "So masters is kind of what changed my life, and also you're miserable here. You're working behind a desk, and you just begged me to take a 2 hour to lunch to go teach." So that's how I fell into teaching, because it was out of depression. And when I say that, people are like, "What? That's a horrible thing to say." Yeah, I was fell into teaching because I was super depressed, and I thought I was never going to dance again. So I was like, well, I might as well just give up all the other inhibitions in my life and do the thing that told the Lord I refused to ever do.
Mhm.
And then I actually became good at it and liked teaching.
That. Look at that.
Sometimes I care about my kids. It's like
You
really
need to
weird.
stop.
Um, and I tell them, they're like, "Oh my God, you care." I'm like, no, no, I would never, ever, ever admit that. But if you need someone to talk to, like you can come out of the room, but don't be telling people that I care about you. Um, and then after that, like I started dancing again because I thought dancing was over. When you're a teacher, you're a full time teacher. You have
Yeah.
no other time for any other thing in life, and I thought that that's what that meant. So then I started booking shows, going on tour, um,
Yes.
dancing in Europe during the summers. I was like, what? What is happening? So the
Mm,
career that I thought I was supposed to have happened in the career that I never ever wanted.
mm.
And then I got into these leadership roles because I'm with NYC Men Teach, and that's how I met Gholdy, who I asked her, can I refer to her as my best friend? And she said yes. So I met my best friend Gholdy, and I also realized that cannot be in a deficit space.
Mhm.
Teachers who need a little bit more were more than the teachers who had enough, and a lot more than the teachers who had more than enough. And I didn't know which category I fit in, but I knew that I had a little bit more. So I started like mentoring, because that's what the NYC Menteach program does. And then I was doing a lot more of the PDs that Gholdy was doing, Dr. Yolanda Celio Ruiz is doing.
Yes.
Um, my heart, which is actually why I'm in the trajectory that I'm in now, the late Kalila Brand,
Mm.
who was basically like, "Why are you here? Why are you in my PD?" And I was like, "Because I love what you do and I think it's dope." And she's like, "You don't need to be here. You need to be running this PD. You need to be doing this." And I was like, what is happening? So all
Mm.
these strong black women, because that's basically the story of my life, I would have fallen deep if it wasn't for strong black women. And they were like, "This is what you need to be doing." And I'm realizing that now that I'm in a leadership program, so I'm getting another master's, I'm in school again. But I'm realizing there needs to be this transition between, yeah, the theoretical that they say, teacher programs say, "Oh, we don't teach that. We're going to prepare you for the field." And then they get in the field, and then if they're white, they're damaging students. If they're black, they're damaging students. Because if they aren't knowing the students that they teach, then it's a complete mess. And if you haven't recovered from the trauma that you've experienced as a
Yep.
student, you're going to start that all over again. So thankfully, I was caught a little earlier in that and was able to reevaluate who I was as a teacher, who I was as a dancer, who I am as a black man, accepting that I'm a New Yorker because I've been here for 12 years, even though,
Mhm.
again, I swore I was only going to be here for 3. Um, and after, I accepted all that, I was like, okay, I think this is the charge that I need to go in. So that's me, I think.
Yes. And you know what? I just love the wholeness of who you are, and um your artistry and your teaching, and how you show us how you were able to keep both of those, because I think teaching is such a demanding job that you just feel like you can't do anything else sometimes. And
Hmm.
it does hurt our wellness and our wholeness when we don't do things that also teaching can is brings us joy and is our passion, but other passions that we have as well, and we can do both. We don't have to always choose. And the way you
Agreed.
are listening to, I mean, this was the whole message in what you just shared. I mean, the way you tried to run but then you had to come back, and thinking about all of those things. So um I think you kind of told us about, like, so you teach dance, right?
Yes, high school dance teacher.
You're a high school dance teacher. And do you teach just in a high school? Do you teach other places?
Primarily high school. So, I mean, you're a teacher, so I know you know this, but like, it's a requirement for students to graduate. So, I am a teacher, just like you have an English teacher, science teacher.
Oh, you there's
Um,
not no elective.
no,
This
oh
is
no. So thankfully, it's required. So they were a little bit smart. My school, they made all the students take art their freshman year because it's required. And then I get to convince them enough to stick around and then utilize the rest of their 3 years for an elective. Um, yeah, I mean, I was a little bold.
tell your students I'm so jealous of them. Tell your students I'm jealous because I never had this type of experience, and I'm so jealous of them. Just tell them that.
I will. I was a little. I'm really surprised at myself because I'm tenured now, which in when NYC schools, if you're not tenured in, well, back in my day, it was 3 years. If you're not tenured in 3 years, you're about to get fired. So it was an inevitability. But even before I was hired, I told the principal, I was like, if you don't want a sequential program and if you want me to be here like an after school teacher, do not hire me. I want to build a program. I want to build a sequential program. And if that's what you don't want and it's not going to align, do not hire me. Um,
Mm.
that was the first of many bold statements. But yeah, since then, for the past 7 years, I've been building this program and really excited about my students leaving and having a bit more knowledge about arts and then also about themselves. So
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, transport us to your, I don't know if I should say classroom. Just correct my language because you did, or should I say studio? I don't know what
it's a,
you
it's
dance.
it's funded, so it's a studio. I got a sprung floor with mirrors, so it's finally a
Yes.
studio.
Oh my God. That is I'm really jealous. I wanted to do that when I was in school. I wanted to be. That is amazing, yo. That's really amazing. Like I'm like so, like I'm really being serious, y'all. Like I'm like so like I could just see it. So they have like a real studio.
They have a real studio with real mylar mirrorings that I threaten their life if they even look at it too hard because they cost money and I'm never gonna get that money again. So yeah, I really build in some ownership on their part of being in that
Yes.
space because when I first got there, I was in a room that I had to mop up every morning before we used because there would be a nice little
Mm,
puddle of water.
mm.
So yeah.
That's amazing. So okay, now that I got that in my head. So
Hmm.
transport us to your studio with your students. What will we find? What will we see? What will we feel? What will be happening?
Well, I'm excited to say this year. I know if you're on TikTok, you know there's this whole series of videos of COVID babies. Well, these COVID high schoolers, they came ready to work, and I did a professional development yesterday. My goodness, time is doing this, and I feel like years are between days. And I was in another room right beside the dance studio, and I had a teacher watch a couple classes while I was doing the professional development and, I strongly state that things better get done when I sign them. And I was happy to walk past the room, and they didn't know that I was there because in their mind, I was gone. And they were dancing. They were helping each other. They brought the teacher who I think they know from the school, but they don't know her as a teacher because they're
Mm-hmm.
freshmen. um, taught her the dance, told her when to press play. And this is, by the way, this is the middle of week 5. So,
Wow.
I was floored. I'm going to be very honest. And it was one of the things that, like, the teacher that I was walking with, she was like, record it, put it on Slack, make all the teachers jealous. And I was like, bet. So I recorded it, definitely put a little tagline. Oh, look at my kids working while I'm at PD, while your kids don't do that in the classroom with you. But I was so excited that, yeah, dancing, great. You're dancing on beat, cool. Y'all know when to press play. But the fact that students were actually helping other students, and they all
Yes.
wanted to like reach whatever level of excellence that they felt they needed to reach, they wanted to do that together. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I ain't about to tear up. I refuse. Let me just stop, press and record, and let me just go back to my little PD and let them talk at me, whatever this PD is about. Because I it's one of those things, like, I know I'm responsible for them and I know I'm responsible for what was happening, but I never imagined that that would happen so quickly. And then seeing it in other classes, because of course I would sneak into the other classes to see if, they were doing what they needed to do. The kids yelled at me, Mr. Blanchard, you messed up the recording. Now I got to start over again. Like, it was perfect. And go ahead and press pause. And okay, like, press the music. And I was just like, oh, y'all got a system. And I am interrupting a system that y'all built together. And
Yes.
you right. I'm gonna shut the store and I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave. I'm sorry. And it was, yeah, I was just like, wow, I was floored. And it was a beautiful thing to see. It's a wonderful thing to see them take dance, and then when we have conversations about it being applied to the real world, they know how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the first things that I told them, it's the trailer to How to Get Away with Murder. I've never seen it yet, because I wanted to save it, on those days that I'm trapped in the house. I know she says, I don't know what happened, like, you should make uh, allegiance with your God to be put in my class or something like that. But it was kind of a speech like that. But I said, from henceforth, I'm only referring to you as dancers. You are now a part of the
Mm-hmm.
legacy of dance, and everything you do contributes to that legacy.
Right.
And to see those kids actually like believe that, and then also making the steps to contribute positively to that legacy that they now know that they're a part of,
Yes.
I was like, so I don't just be saying words now. Like, these words have
Y'all
meaning.
be listening.
Y'all
Y'all
be
be
listening and applying it.
oh.
Now I can actually like say it out loud and like I believe it when I say it. But it
Yes.
was it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, let me just get a tissue real quick because ain't nobody about to see me drop a tear. But it was amazing, and I'm just so excited to work with them, and they're excited to work with me. Even the ones who are like, I can't dance, but like, I like this class. And I'm like, great, you can't dance. I'm a dance teacher.
Right.
Looks like I have a job to do, and we
Yes.
all can work together. Yay. So
I
it's
love
great.
it. But when you just so I have been out of the classroom for a while. Well, I teach. I'm a professor now, and I work with youth at certain times, like in the summer and stuff. But
Hmm.
but when you did that, like I can't dance, but I guess I like your class. It just reminded me, like those are our kids. Those
And
are
I'm
our
like, why
kids.
are y'all bonding with me so quick? Stop telling me your business. We aren't
Listen, all the
friends.
business. All the business. All the business. Like I always knew it was jumping off. Cause somebody was gonna
Hmm.
tell me you ain't get away with nothing. Cause somebody gonna come and tell me, Miss Nia
Hmm.
Chai, so and so said. Da-da." I was like, oh, they did. Oh, okay.
My
What time?
phrase, the language of the time. I'm like, ain't none of y'all low. Y'all
Oh,
are mad loud. I can't be
listen.
nosy. There's no part of me being nosy if you're yelling your business across the hallway.
Right.
And I'm in the basement. So, New York schools, there's multiple schools in one building. So they call a building a
Mm,
campus. I think one of the beautiful things about that, and the thing that I missed and really affected me the most during COVID, because you
mhm.
realize you do be liking them kids, and you do be wondering if they fed, and if
Yes,
they're in a
absolutely.
safe environment. And I was like, but I have connections with so many kids in different schools, And, you know, I give everybody a nickname because I'm too old to be remembering 7,000 kids. But it's also just weird because I can't call up another school and be like, hey, so Robert Curtis Williams in like the 11th grade at such and such school, like, is he doing well? Like, because that's weird. But every
Right.
morning, you know, I see those kids pass by my room because they have to pass by my room to get to the other schools. Um, that also I feel like unites. Like I don't have troublemakers because everybody knows me.
That's
Um,
right.
and as big, I'm a 6'2" black dude in a school that does not have many of me. But I'm built like a teddy bear, so it like works with me and works against me sometimes.
Right.
Because like the kids can be fearful, but then they're also like, you ain't gonna do nothing. So it's a great balance of like connecting all the kids together, all the schools together, and like making sure that like that culture that I now I have evidence that I built inside my room. It permeates throughout the school and it walks out of my door, and I love that.
And you know what I love about what you said, and this is something when I was in schools, I really liked teachers like this that understood this, is that like all of these children that walk up in this building are my children. You know, all
Hmm.
of these young people are my young people. It's not just the ones that I teach in my class, but who you walk past this class, you gonna get to know me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You gonna know me a little bit of something. So I love all of that. So I believe that teachers must possess particular beliefs about students of color and education in order to embody and enact culturally and historically responsive teaching. So what do you believe to be true about students of color and education?
Hmm. So I can tell you what I did not believe until I met
Yes.
Goldie, and then I can
Hmm.
tell you how it reaffirmed everything else that I believe. I did not believe in Ubuntu. Didn't believe in it. And
Oh,
when Goldie mentioned it, I was like, girl, it's a West African word that means circle. Uh huh. Like, totally wrong. That's clearly not what it means. Because what I came from was, now I want to call it critical Black love, but it was really
hmm,
just like, you know, unapologetic, do what I say, not what I do. And that's how I was taught. And that's how things were reinforced within me. And there was no explanation behind it. And if there was an explanation, it was, I lived this long, so obviously I know what I'm talking about. And I noticed that that was finding its way in my teaching. Um, and that's not what this generation connects to.
right.
So it was, it kind of changed. It kind of changed to like, I'm going to be that critical love, um, but, you know, still a little crunchy granola. And that really wasn't working either. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, oh, like I need to really change my tone because I could literally lose these kids either through the drama outside their house or the fact that there's no one in their house reinforcing that self love for them to maintain as a high schooler. And every lesson, no matter if it was dance, if we were physically dancing, if I was showing them a video, if we were going over concepts using slides, there was something in my lesson that connected to them needing to be a part of what we were doing. And if they
Hmm.
weren't a part of it, we couldn't function as a whole.
Mm.
And if they weren't ready to be a part of it for whatever reason, we were taking that time to connect and saying, so what do we need through this virtual means to really connect us? And that's when I realized that, oh, because of you are, I am, because of I am, you are. Like, that balance that I needed, that healing that I needed as a child who,
Yes.
you know, critical Black love got me to be in this age, but I'm now realizing it's not going to get that next generation over the hump.
Hmm.
And I, that is something that really has walked itself back. Sankofa, since we just gonna throw out some words,
Come on.
it walked itself back into this space that I did realize that people believed in me, people cared for me, people made sure that they were present for me, and those were all the things that I was giving to the students. And unfortunately, it was a little bit more elusive when I first started teaching. But now I know what it means to actually be present and be a presence to the students who are within the room and within the whole building. Um, And that is something that I need my Black and brown kids to understand. And also, one of the first lessons that I teach is, what does your family dance? And I always start off with, after I make the whole statement of you are now dancers, aha, I tricked you, you can't leave, you can't drop out, I'm gonna make sure I stop you. You gonna just suffer with me for the rest of the year. After that whole speech is done, it's like, where does your family dance? How does your family dance? What do they dance? And everyone's like, my family don't dance. I was like, your family doesn't dance at barbecues, graduation, West Indian Day parades, funerals, repasts, weddings. Like, your family dances. So when do they dance? How do they dance? Who are the dancers? And those little moments where they realize that they are also a part of a larger community outside of themselves, that is
Mm-hmm.
something that was very much instilled in me. It was, you are now part of this legacy. You are now part of people who came before you. You can be beautiful about saying kings and queens of Africa and whatnot, but to my students, they don't know outside of the Bronx or outside of DR. So I want them to know what's in their home, who they are. So then when I mention things outside of New York City, they're like, oh, yeah, that's just like my cousin, or oh, yeah, that's just like my friend, or oh, that's me. And that was one of the things that I realized about representation. We didn't have the language back then. I didn't know that I was an anomaly having more than two Black male teachers in my life. And now finding out all this research, I know that that is a big deal that I had four.
Yeah.
So I realized what representation meant because that was the only thing that those teachers gave me. So when I did it, I didn't think that it was this new thing until my principals walked in and they were like, oh my God, such and such isn't speaking out and they're working. And I'm like, yeah, they know better. They're like, no, no, no. In other classes, like they would, I'm like, really? In this class, they make sure that they help everyone. They make sure that if their friend is acting rowdy, that they talk to their friend. I was like, what's not connecting for them in other classes?
Right.
So I realize when I give them the ability to see themselves as these scholars, as these dancers, as these researchers, all these titles that, again, in teacher school, they were like, yeah, make sure you give your students a leadership role. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's weird. And then I realized I was doing it already, but we didn't
Yep.
call it a leadership role. It was what you
Right.
did. It
That's
was the
right.
work. So yeah, those are kind of my beliefs that I've always had. And then now, thanks
Mm-hmm.
to some reinforcement, I realized that, that full circle moment of realizing that I always put out what I want the students to receive, and I always want them to receive something that they can take beyond the classroom.
Mm-hmm. I love how you honor, honor and critique and heal in the ways that I can relate to being parented in particular type of ways,
Hmm.
knowing that it was from a loving place. It's historically about like life is hard for us, so we don't have time to for you to be going back and forth with you. You just need to learn how to do what you told, because if you don't do
Hmm.
what you told in here and then you don't do it out there, somebody gonna hurt you, right?
Right.
And how we understand that, but we still and how we need to heal from that too, right? And how we can still do something different even though that's how we came up. And I appreciate how you said that, and even for you to reflect and just be like, you know what, I can do this a little differently. I can do this differently, because
Hmm.
I think that's hard for us sometimes, especially like it's really ingrained into us a lot. Like that's the way you rear children. That's how you get
Hmm.
kids to mind, especially if you are Black. Like this, how we do. Y'all just come up in here and da, da, da. And it worked for us, right?
Hmm.
But it's like, but did it?
Did it.
Completely
Did
did
it
it?
right.
You know, did it? And so, what can we do? It doesn't mean that we don't appreciate it or whatever, but what can we do to do better? So yes. So thinking about all of that,
Hmm.
thinking about your own healing, your own approach, how, I love how you like, in teacher school, they say, in your own teacher school, y'all say this, that, and the other, but I was already, right? But,
Hmm.
so how do you cultivate genius within students of color?
So it's funny that you say that because that was then a conversation Goldie and I had. Um, so I'm sorry, it's just funny. My senior superlative was prettiest eyes and teacher's pet. To this day, I'm still the teacher's pet. So Gholdy, of course, I didn't know Gholdy was going to be my best friend. But she was just this dope person with a great idea. You know, she didn't have a book then, so she was just like
Mhm.
really being very real with us about tactics that we can use, critiquing what we have done, and reinforcing the good things that we did. So just like Kalila, who was like, "Why the heck are you here?" And I'm like, "Because I need to learn." When Gholdy gave us a task, I'm just like, Gholdy, is this good enough? Can you read it? Just get a red pen. Just go at it. And she looked at me like, yeah, this is exactly what it needs to be. And that was what I needed, but I didn't know how to use it because I've been doing that in my class. I've been doing that in my teaching. That's who I was. But when again, how do I be nice about this? When administrators who don't know what I'm doing or how I'm doing it come into my
Mhm.
room,
Mhm.
they don't have that language to support it. So
Yeah.
I'm left questioning myself. So when we talk about identity and when I talk about how what we're doing in class connects to them in the present moment, the generations before them, and quite possibly the generations after them, to me, that wasn't a new idea. I was like, they're here. A lot of them don't want to be dancers, so I can't guilt them into a career. I can't use whatever remorse or regret that I have about my career against them like my teachers did. So I need them to understand who they are enough in this room so they actually feel passionate about producing anything and showing themselves and being vulnerable and sharing.
Yep.
Um, and people didn't understand that, and I didn't have the language to back it up. And then thinking about like criticality, like we're doing this work. I One of the first things that I do in my dance survey class is we basically follow the African diaspora through from Africa and then through the timeline in America. And I always relate it back to figures, people, historical situations, juxtapositions of cultures at the same time. Um, yeah, I didn't think that was the thing that people were writing books about. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so so when it comes to like cultivating genius, all of my students and especially my seniors now who were pissed that they could not get dance. Oh, they were angry. But you know, they would always come up to me like, "What the freshmen doing? Are they doing what we did before? Like, are they on this? Y'all better listen to Mr. Blanchard or Mr. B or Blanchy." They call me all sorts of names, and you know, the fact that they were walking proud that they've been in my class and they knew what they learned from my class beyond just the dancing. The fact that they're coming to me now for senior recommendations after 2 years of not even being around me. And they were like, "Oh, you know, you did this when I was going through that. And, you know, when we talked about this, it helped me understand how I could speak about that." And I'm just like, girl, I was teaching you how to tandu. I don't remember any of this like social emotional learning that you were doing because, of course, that wasn't the language 3 years ago.
Right.
I was just telling you to hold your head up because people are paying to see you. Or when you walk across the floor doing a certain Afro Caribbean step by Miss Catherine Dunham, she believed that she was an embodiment of goddesses and gods. So you need to hold your head and your chest up like that. I didn't know that that was inspiring.
Yeah.
That's the step. So I'm realizing now cultivating genius means twofold. I need to be a little bit more explicit about that. Like, this is what you're doing with the kids. I'm not going to tell them why they're learning it. I want them to end up telling me because that's usually the project at the end of the semester, end of the year. What did you learn and how can you apply it? But now, when the
Mhm.
teachers come in my room,
Yeah.
I have to be a little bit more explicit in a way that's irritating, but also in a way that I know is necessary. Because if I don't do it, they aren't going to see it. And if they don't see it, they're going to miss them. And that's going to be my fault that they're going to miss these kids that I interact with. So I want the kids to know who they are. And if they're still figuring out who they are, now you
Right.
have a lot of different references of what this choice can do, or what this inspiration can lead to, or what this bad idea can spark into multiple good ideas. Like, I want them to get that from my class. And if they become famous, I told them that I better be in their biographies. That there better be a thank you, Mr. Blanchard. It better
I
be
know that's
prominently
right.
towards the middle, or at
In
the top. You
the
can talk about yourself at the top, but don't you put it at the bottom so where they can
middle.
like rip it off because they want to save space. So yeah,
Oh, so you got a specific space you want to be thanked.
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay.
Hmm.
Okay, all right. Um, I feel like you've been telling us a lot about what Cultivating Genius offered you already. I think you've been telling us about like what you learned from that. But I will say, I will ask this. So, obviously you were recommended by Dr. Gholdy Muhammad. So I know you is all that and then some because she don't play,
She
okay?
doesn't.
She don't play. And I know you are high quality, you are doing all those things. I mean that
Oh,
diaspora
bless you.
lesson you just shared off the top of your head, like I just do this while I'm holding my cup of coffee. I'm like, what? Like you better, okay? So I know you are all that and some. So and I'm sure you were already, like you shared, you talked about a lot of things that you were already doing and you just didn't have it like the teacher language, but you were doing it
Hmm.
and you were creating those spaces for students. So how does culturally and historically responsive literacy challenge you or push you, and how does it add to your classroom practice and curriculum?
Ooh, so I think this is when I realized that I kind of want to be Goldie when I get older. So I have always been in love with history. So
Yeah.
everyone knows me from high school to now. Um, I'm a walking encyclopedia. I know everything there is about Black dance or dance history. And what people tend to forget, if you know art history, you know history because everything happens with everything. So when I heard Goldie talk about the Black society, the Black literary societies, and specifically those for Black women, I was just like, oh my God, this is what I love. This is what I do. So now what I make sure I do is, thankfully, resources have become a little bit more abundant, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, but thankfully it's here. And just making sure that I have multiple resources for my students. And then I'm always connecting a through line for them. So I never want them to look at something and say, oh, that's the olden days, or oh, that, it's black and white, it's cool, we're learning history, yay. But I want them to know why this happened. How does
Yeah.
it affect you now? What could have been done differently? What would you do differently? And it's again about that criticality about it. Like, why I have to remember why I'm teaching this, because I'm not teaching this for future dancers. Being very realistic, a lot of my students love to dance. A lot of my students now, they might pick a career in dance, but before they just liked my classroom, which was a great compliment to me, but it was also a lot of pressure
Yeah.
because I got to keep them coming back. These are high schoolers. We can't. Back in my day, you got to lock the door and stuff like that. We can't do that now. So when I find the lessons within history, so like the history of ballet, King Louis XIV, young king, people were trying to kill him. So what he did, he made a party every Saturday. And back in the day, left and right shoes were not left and right shoes; they were shoes. Men had heels because, of course, men are better than women. Yes, it sparked some. What did he just say? Yeah, I said it with my full chest. And then I showed them this picture of King Louis XIV, who was clearly wearing a gold gown. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, huh? He thinks he's superior? He was superior. And, they would rehearse all night and then they would dance. And if they did well, they would get closer to him in the court. And if they didn't, they'd get laughed out of the kingdom. Does that sound like anything that happened in the lunchroom yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what? Yeah, it does. Who thought they were better than somebody? Why? And it's just one of these things that, yeah, I can teach you Demi Demi Grand, I can teach you Grand Jetés, I can teach you a Sente Step of West Africa or a Yambalu of West Caribbean, but if you don't know why these things happened in history, and if you don't know why they would be relevant to you, what is the point of you learning it? What
Yeah.
does it mean to have this tyrant king who was very full of himself, but he brought a lot of good things, right? So if he did a lot of good things, he couldn't be bad, right? Or could he? So, we're talking about these things that they're going through as they're navigating high school. They're dealing with breakups. They're like, but
Yep.
my boo bought me this though, so they can't be that bad. Yeah, they can. It's called manipulation, boo. And you
Mhm.
saw what King Louis XIV did in this ballet lesson. I need you to see it with this person. Please break up with them. Um, but you can't say stuff like that.
Right, right.
Uh,
But you be like, put it together, put the pieces together,
right.
boo.
I was like, the subliminal messages that are not as subliminal because I wrote them in my learning target.
Right.
But I just love the fact that ooh, lies. I don't love the fact that history repeats itself, but I love the fact that history can continue to be relevant in a way that, again, Sankofa, that we can reach back into some of those lessons and bring them forward. Um, in hopes that if they do repeat themselves, it's the good things. It's
Right.
the abundant things, the things that need to be in
Mhm.
abundance, the joy that happens, the self preservation that happens because we have all bonded together in joy and in solitude, that we are going to keep that joy. Um, and that's what I hope to get from these historical approaches to what I do, because as I tell the kids, I didn't make up any of this. Mr. Blanchard is not Mr. Dance. He didn't invent it. He didn't do any of this. I'm just the vessel in which to teach you. And then you guys get to take that information how you want to.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And so if you listening, all of these teachers, they giving y'all a whole bunch of lesson plans. You done got about 10 lesson plans from Mr. Blanchy. I know they Mr. Blanchy done gave you that ain't his name, y'all. But
No, a senior will fight a freshman. You don't deserve to call him Blanchy. And I'm just like, oh,
oh,
for one,
it's right. It's right. So
I need
I
y'all all
don't
to go
want
to
them coming
class.
for me. I don't want them coming for me. So Mr. Blanchard, I'm gonna say the real name. Don't come for me, please. But yes. Okay. So in our conversation with Dr. Gholdy Muhammad, she shared that criticality is one area of her framework that often gets ignored. Do you agree? And how do you combat this? Additionally, what suggestions do you have for teachers that may be leaving out criticality, the criticality aspect of the framework?
Yes. And again, these are one of the things that she kind of just stared at me when I asked her, did I do the criticality part right? And she was like, yes, because you get away from me. Um, and I was like, okay, so I'm going to stop asking her because I clearly did it. And then when I was tasked to go, like observe my mentees or go into different classes because I'm a model teacher. So this teacher leader within the school. So I go into the rooms and I'm just like, oh, this is not innate at all. This is not second nature. And when teachers, it's kind of like a curse. They're always like, well, how does such and such do well in your class? Or he likes your class. That's why he won't do that in math or in ELA. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
that child don't like me any more than he like you. I am a class. He would want to be doing something else. But I'm realizing when that connection isn't there, and then that connection, that's a verb. Like they need to do something with that connection. That is the
Mhm.
thing that's missing. And I think that's what people forget criticality does. It's not this add on, it's not this thing that you can't
Right.
do. It has to be a forward moving verb.
Mhm.
So I know what I did with, so I'm chair of instructional leadership team. I got all these titles because I do too much. And I sat them down and I just told them, think of your favorite lesson. Think of your favorite lesson. Think of the skills. Think of, the things that you're supposed to do. And then I asked them, one, how does this relate to the students in your room? Vast majority, if you can't do all of them, vast majority will do today. And then after you figure out how it connects, the identity piece, how is that going to work outside of your classroom? Why is that important to them? why is it important to you?
Yep.
Because I don't know about the other teachers. I don't get paid enough to like what somebody else is telling me to teach. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's a sustaining place in education, especially when you're with young people who, as we now realize, coming back to school, they are hungry to learn.
They
The
are.
notion that, all these kids don't want to learn, tis a lie. Tis the biggest lie ever, because these kids are hungry for knowledge. But if you're just talking at them, if you can't tell them how to use this and not use it in an economic way, because people are like, well, if these kids, if they ain't making money, or if they can't think about making money or being
Entrepreneurship.
entrepreneurs, you know,
Entrepreneurship.
I'm just like, no.
Where you work
What?
at? I work at Get Money.
Right. When I teach flamenco, there ain't nothing economical about that. But when I tell them to talk to their grandparents, I want them to know what questions to ask abuela. I have a lot of
Yes.
Dominican students, a lot of Caribbean students.
Right.
What does grand say? What did grand do? How did she pass that information to you? Oh, you
Yes.
like to cook? Did grand write that down? Did mom write that down? Did she text it to you, or were you on the phone, or were you right beside her and you put too much thought and you had to figure out how to get it? So that oral tradition that we
Yes.
talk about in flamenco, that we talk about in our West African unit, that we then talk about in this hip hop unit, they know that, oh, when I story tell and I leave out information, that's going to be a detriment to the generations after me. But when
Mm-hmm.
I, the whole, if you give a kid a fish, they'll be full. But if you teach a kid the fish, they'll never starve. I don't really know it. That wasn't the idiom that was taught to me. But like when you teach the students why they need to connect to what they're doing and what that means for them moving forward, they'll be attached to it. They'll use it. Those critical thinking skills that you want them to connect with, boom, you got it. You want them to analyze something, give them a conversation worth analyzing. You
Listen,
want
that
them to solve this math problem. These kids care about global warming. Okay, they are sick of winter. They are sick of storms. They can't wear their Timbs if it's always raining. Like, connect it to who they
yes, I
are.
love that.
And it's like frustrating because I'm like, you literally have the bomb lesson and you don't care who you're teaching it to, and you're wondering why they don't care to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of it.
Mm. So, what advice would you give a new teacher who is fearful of teaching in these ways?
One, why?
Why? Just
So,
why?
there was a beautiful statement that Gholdy said that I was like, ooh. And then I realized I am the same human being. Gholdy so beautifully and eloquently said in her beautifully squeaky voice, very calm tone, she said, there are people who need to be coached out of the field. And if I need to, I will be the one to coach them out of it. And I was just like, ooh, that's cold blooded. And then I met a couple people who I was like, is this what you want?
Listen, it's other things you can do.
You're young. People are jumping into this field at 24. I couldn't do it, but if you want to do it, figure out why and make it personal to you, but then also make it realistic to what you want to do for the community. Because this is a very selfless thing to do. And when I think of new teachers, it should be easy, especially with how people receive knowledge, how they disseminate knowledge. It is very Ubuntu. It's already set up if you care to actually be in that and actually really dive into what that means. Um, but it's also, if you don't want to continue learning yourself, then you should not teach. And that's what I ran into with a lot of older teachers. Oh, that's a lot. I got to prepare for the regents. And I was like, yeah, isn't your job attached to the regent score? So if we want to play hardball, if your students aren't connected to what you're teaching them, and then they don't take this test seriously that you need in order to keep your job.
Better say that.
So let's back it up. Let's knock ourselves off the pedestal. And I think that's one of the things that dance never. Unfortunately, the only ego you're allowed to have as a dancer is on stage. So I didn't get the chance to walk into the classroom as an ego, even though I'm technically the content specialist in the entire campus. I can't walk in like, oh, well, I know dance and that's his eye. I have to humble myself
That's his eye.
because if I know dance, do I know how to apply this critical thinking to this video that we're about to play, to this excerpt that we're about to read, to these pictures that I'm about to show? Because those things are universal in all my other classes. And the song that we're about to listen to, can the song connect to a picture? And if those two can connect, can they connect to the dance? These are things that you would do in an ELA class, that you would do in a social studies class. And that was because I made myself available to that professional development. I willingly went to Gholdy's PD, not knowing what it meant to be, what was it? Culturally responsive teaching in action. I think that was the name of her workshop before she started doing other stuff with us. And Dr. Yolanda Silly Ruiz's archaeology of the self. Lord knows I
Mm-hmm.
don't ever want to be thinking about myself in a dance class and my hurt and my pain, but I realize that stuff shows up in my teaching.
Yep.
If I've had this colonial mindset, this whiteness applied to my teaching and how I want my students to interact with what they're learning, and then I tell them to be their authentic self? Like, are those two things really going to align? So I think as a new teacher, you have to be open to realize that what you think is going to be best probably ain't going to be best. And you just
Right.
need to open up and realize that there's more. What are some other idioms that I never actually used in real life? There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yep.
Nobody skins cats, but I'm realizing that teachers are so stuck in their ways. And I was coaching a couple teachers who I was like, um, I wanted them to really dive into what it means to be inquiry based. And they're like, well, no, the kids don't read, so I read it to them, and then I play the video, and then some of them don't get it, so I repeat the video. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa!
Mm-mm.
You
Mm-mm.
repeat a video that already has closed captioning? Why? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
doing that? Like, why aren't you giving them a chance
Taking up a
to
lot of time.
right? Like and I get it. If you want to waste time, be real. Tell me you want to waste
Right.
time, and I will
You just
shut up
trying to
and
get
I won't cut.
period. That's what it sound like to me.
But no, they really think that that's the way. Well, it's reinforcing. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're telling them they don't need to either listen to you or listen to the video or listen to either, because you're
Right.
doing it multiple times. How about you put them in a situation to where they need to utilize said skills that you just taught them? 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Tell them to
Yep.
come on back. Tell them to tell each other. We could do this over Skype. You could do it in real life. And I think when teachers get this notion of, well, this is how I learned, this is how I was taught, this is how I was told to teach, you're going to miss the students who are actually in front of you. Because great, it
Yep.
worked for you. You got a master's degree, boo boo. These kids got an eighth grade diploma. Like you have to go back and realize that these kids aren't you. And yeah, that's what I would say a lot more to the new teachers. But don't stop learning. Don't think that just because you got this degree in this specialty that is what's going to be the thing that teaches your content. I
Mm-hmm.
use music to teach my content. I use history. I use ELA. I use math. I used to be right across the hallway from the geometry teacher. And she was like, did you just teach them Euclid geometry today? I sure did.
Mm-hmm.
We translated, one step over the other way horizontally. Isn't that
Yes.
translating over the
Come on. Come
y-axis?
on. Come
So
on, Mr. Blanchard.
so
Mm.
if I can do that because I'm supposed to, right? Because it's just dance, it's just an elective. I got to find some ways to connect it to the other content areas. If I can do that, say it with my whole chest, and then those content teachers see that I'm doing it, you need to be able to do that, science
Yep.
teacher. You need to be able to do that, ELA teacher. How is your work going to connect with these students in a way that they can actually utilize it? That isn't going to result into everyone getting a Wix or a Squarespace page and trying to make money off of it. That's good that you want them to make money, but how are they going to believe in themselves when they actually
Yep.
apply for college, or when they go to that job interview, or
Yep.
when they actually need to connect with another person to work with them for a group project? So I said a lot, but hopefully it landed upon some new
It
teacher.
was it was amazing. Okay? And they did and it did. I already know it will and it did. And that's that. This is the last question. What is your dream for the educational experiences of students of color and for schools more broadly?
Ooh, okay. So you want to ask questions that my therapist asked.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
So I didn't do that homework assignment yet. So hmm, let's think small because those small nuggets turn into big dreams. I think right now I am. So the plan for me to get this educational leadership degree is not to be a principal or an AP. Unfortunately, a lot of people are cursing me and they're like, you smart, you talk well, you know what you talk about, you're going to be just those things. Of course, I told you that I never wanted to be a teacher. But I've realized that I was doing so well on the ground level, building these connections with the students and the content, and then the teachers understanding how to reinforce their content. And now I wanted to see it from a top down approach. That may or may not be the realistic thing, but what I'm noticing is there's um, less value placed on the things that actually made me a good student. I
Mhm.
learned so much about my culture and life from my church experience.
Yep.
I learned so much about my culture and life from us making up dances in each other's basement before we went to ballet practice, a ballet rehearsal, or to the dance studio. I learned so much about my culture and my education when I did different after school programs.
Yep.
I didn't play sports, but when I used to support my friends who played sports, you know, there were
Yeah.
all of those different communities that actually impacted who I am as a teacher and a student and who I
Yep.
was as a young student. And I think the value on those has been pushed aside,
Mm.
which is a problem because, it takes all kinds to make the world. And it usually takes more than just one village to raise a child.
It's
And if
true.
you don't pay attention, the wrong village is going to raise that child.
Yep.
And, you know, when it's said like, oh well, sports, that child gonna be an athlete. That's all they care about. Yeah, let's put them in sports so at least they'll come to school. And I'm like, or we can encourage them to go to school and then be a leader in both their classroom and on the field or on the court or wherever they play table tennis at. We can utilize both of those skills in both areas and then we can reinforce them in both areas. And I'm noticing that that language isn't used at all, especially when it comes to our black and brown students because they're the entertainers. Of course you teach dance, you're an entertainer. Really, these
Mm-mm.
kids learned about more about history in my class than they did in the past 3 years in middle
Listen.
school.
Mhm.
So I know that I teach more than just entertainment. And if I know that as a dance teacher, I want other teachers to realize that they have the power to instill leadership, to instill citizenship, and all the great things that education was supposed to do. If we
Mhm.
stop putting these blinders on things that are outside of our building and actually really get in touch with the community. Like, that's
Yes.
the whole point, right? School was supposed to
Mhm.
be this mechanism in which to train up students to then be active and dedicated and positive citizens in the neighborhood around them. But you forgetting about the neighborhood around them? It don't make sense. It don't connect. So I want us to be a little bit more a little bit more cognizant of that and how that actually influences our children for good and
Yes.
for bad. And then
Mhm.
make sure we give them the critical thinking skills to make their own decisions. None of these kids want to be criminals. None of these kids want to be dropouts. None of these kids want to fail. Quite
No, they don't
frankly,
want to fail. They
even if,
don't.
even if it's the class they hate, they don't want to fail
They
it.
don't want to fail it. That's so true.
So I want those conversations to turn into action. Oh my God, if I receive another email about another PD about how to do something and y'all don't actually give me actionable skills, and then we don't actually come back a couple months later and share
Check
said
in.
results of actionable
Mhm.
skills, I'm going to blow my gasket. But I want that to
Mhm.
start happening for our kids, because we know that it happens in the affluent neighborhoods, in the private schools, in the Catholic schools, and these charter schools, which don't get me started on them. We know that it
Some of
happens
them. Some of them.
outside. We know it happens in those places, and then when it comes to public school, it's just like, oh, them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
them kids could actually change the world. Just give them a little something, then, oh, well, I think they're going to do it because, they're an athlete, or they're going to do it because, they're a big brother, or so they're going to have to do it. And I hate that defeated language towards our babies. Um,
Yes.
but then again, I believe that they're our babies, so
That's right.
that could actually be the through line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I mean, y'all better have y'all notebook out during this episode. Rewind it and listen again because the lecture and the lesson has been taught. Okay, the teacher was here. Were you ready to listen? Were you ready to receive? Because it was here. Okay. So, thank you so much for just being
Thank
here, for
you.
saying yes, and just sharing, like, just being so authentic and just real and sharing everything. um I mean, you got me reflecting on a lot of things. That's why I'm like, like, I'm thinking about a lot, and I just appreciate for um the nuances in your all of your responses. Like, I just feel like the conversation has so many layers to it, and it's really challenging me in a lot of ways too. So,
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for saying yes. I thank Goldie for having my name on her heart, and that means I'm doing something right. If my best friend says my
yes,
name, recommends me.
that's right, best friend. That's right. Where to begin in our recap of the vulnerability, reflection on deficit thinking, history, and dreams that DeAngelo offered? For one, the wellness of teachers is contingent upon them maintaining other passions besides teaching. And as we teach, we must unlearn problematic child rearing practices and heal our inner child in order to be the best teachers we can be. As DeAngelo so beautifully stated, we must be present and be a presence. However, teachers also need to be affirmed when they engage in the rigorous work of culturally and historically responsive teaching. Thank you, DeAngelo, for schooling us and sharing so much of you. And I don't know why I always have to mention that I'm jealous of either teachers or students. I guess I really do miss the classroom. Thank you for listening to part 3.2 of our Culturally and Historically Responsive Literacy Now, the Brilliance and Joy of Students of Color series. If something from this episode resonated with you, or you have thoughts about it, please share it with others and let us know your thoughts. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday for part 3.3, the final episode in this series, where we interview LA County Teacher of the Year and veteran teacher Stacey Joy. Trust, you do not want to miss that. To find out more about the Evolving Education Project, to write in, or to join our listserv, check us out at evolvingeducationproject.com. And please subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you can only choose one, please follow us on Instagram and love all of our posts. Support that doesn't cost a dime. If you've been enjoying our podcast, you can also support us by writing a review. Favorable reviews help more educators, organizers, families, communities, and activists find us. We hope to continue to cultivate an authentic audience and community. We want you to help us to evolve over time and shape what this could be. Now that you know what we're about, let us know what you want to learn more about, authors that you would like us to interview, discussions you would like to have. Also, please write in by sharing your stories, dilemmas, joys, a related incident that made you laugh, questions, disbeliefs, hopes, and more when it comes to people of color. You can write in through the website, but if you ain't got time for all of that, I get it. Write in by sending us a DM through any of our social media outlets. And if you don't want to type it out, you can write in by sending us a voice memo, audio recording, or video. All of this counts as a write-in. Okay, so who should write in? Children and youth of color, parents and caregivers of children and youth of color, traditional and non-traditional educators, students, teachers, leaders, administrators from early childhood to higher ed, activists, organizers, artists, authors, community workers and leaders, nonprofit, not-for-profit, and anyone who loves people of color, is invested in their humanity, their past, their presence, and their futures, and wants to make social justice a reality. We will discuss your write-ins on the show anonymously unless you tell us otherwise, so don't miss it. Tune in next Wednesday for a new episode. Okay, that's all for now, good people. We out.